Hello everyone, Mike with Spray Jones, and I've got a interesting topic as usual. People frequently want to talk about acoustical properties and sound attenuating or soundproofing would be the word that we would use. They want to know how much more soundproof their house, their commercial building is going to be when using spray foam insulation, and that's the topic of our video today. This topic is huge. I could spend probably 3 videos on it and we could get very technical for 2 of them. And I don't think we need to go that route because the majority of you that have clicked on this video now are here to get sort of an overview, and we'll just keep it simple. When talking about sound and foam, there's the 2 products that we're going to look at. We're going to do the closed cell medium density foam or 2-pound density foam, which would range anywhere from a 1.8, 1.85 pounds per cubic foot foam all the way up to 2.3 pounds per cubic foot. Then you've got your open cell foam, which is going to be your half-pound foam, which weighs half a pound per cubic foot. Out of the 2 products, the clear, undisputed champion of acoustical properties is the half-pound foam. And the reason for that is that it is less dense. But when you look at acoustical sound transmission or airborne sound transmission, there's multiple things that both products, 2-pound and half-pound foam, do very, very well to help mitigate, ease, or attenuate. And those would be, first and foremost, the medium material. So the cellular nature of the foam and the plastic foam is a much better absorbing material than your glass fiber or your slag rock fibers. They work very, very well. They're very cohesive and they're very, let's just call it airtight compared to a open fibrous material. So your actual medium is a better product for absorbing and dealing with sound waves. The second thing is the mechanical connection that spray foam offers to a floor or a wall assembly. So rather than just laying in loose, it's actually adhered to the floor joists and the studs. And in floor assemblies, a big part of sound I find is the ductwork, where open cell foam can crawl all around the ductwork and make a huge improvement on the rattle, tinny, echoey vibration that you get out of that. So when the foam is adhered to the substrate, adhered to the framing members, that mechanical apparatus of adhesion provides you with dampening, very similar to when you're ringing a bell or anything is ringing, a guitar string is ringing, or a piece of metal is vibrating and ringing, and you grab onto it. That dampening, that mechanical connection point, dampens the shock wave and the frequency. The other good point that foam adds is mass. Now, generally speaking, adding mass reduces sound transmission a lot. So a concrete floor or a concrete wall has a lot of mass to it, and it's going to be much more soundproof compared to a wood wall or what have you. But there isn't a general ratio that you can use. So for instance, doubling mass does not double your sound transmission class. And very quickly, as we start to look at some stats and figures here, you're going to see a 3 letters come up, STC, sound transmission class, and that is a single reduced number that the industry has come up with through extensive sound testing. So they'll put a wall assembly or a floor assembly into a sound booth, and then they generate noise through a machine that's very similar to a jet engine, and this will create 16 points of reference all the way from low amount of hertz, say 40 or 50 hertz cycles, all the way out to 4,000. And they will test how well the sound waves of those different frequency hertz travel through, around, and with the wall assembly or the floor assembly. They will then reduce that down through different connection points, high and low, and then they will give a final STC average or rating. And that STC is a number that the consumer, the builder, the architect, even the building official is supposed to be able to use to get some sort of basis on how a floor assembly is going to work well or not for sound. So whether it's going to be shouting or noises from suite to suite, room to room, or outside noise coming in. But doubling of mass does not necessarily mean doubling of your STC points. Whereas something like low weight drywall compared to heavy weight, like they've got your standard gyprock that they've had for 40, 50 years, and then they've brought out the lightweight stuff, which is 10, 15% lighter. A lot of times that will degrade the low frequency performance of your house or a suite or whatever you're trying to keep the sound and noise from reverberating through. The other major point is sound absorption. So if you can reduce the reverberating sound energy, so for instance, fibrous in a solid wood cavity will only change the STC rating of that wall cavity just a couple of points. So an empty 2x6 or 2x4 stud cavity's STC value will only change, fluctuate, improve a few STC points with fibrous material added to it. Whereas putting fibrous into steel studs, just into a steel stud wall, can increase it by a factor of 10 STC points. So adding spray foam insulation to a wall assembly brings a number of really key points. It brings you an acoustical medium material that absorbs sound. It has mechanical connection points of the wall assembly and the studs. It has mass to it to absorb the actual transmission waves going through the wall assembly. And it has sound absorption capability for reverberation. So when you factor all of these things in, the closed cell foam does exceptionally well compared to a fiberglass home. So now I'm going to give you some anecdotal information. If you take a home that we've totally spray foamed, roof and walls, I have found that most people will say that the home is very, very quiet, to the point where they notice it when there's other construction or building. However, sound waves, unless you have a meter to measure things, can be a very subjective process. So I've had people that have said, with no background noise on a very crisp, cold day when the air is very cool and the humidity levels are low, they think they can hear a lot more sound. Certain frequency hertz will come through the wall assemblies and stuff like that. So I've found that if there's running a skill saw next door, they've noticed that it's quiet. It's quiet compared to anything that they've had before. But then on a dead calm morning in the wintertime, they can hear the crunching of feet on crunchy snow, somebody out walking their dog. So I found most people really do enjoy the sound quality of the closed cell foam in a house because it's airtight and it absorbs a lot of the reverberation and it absorbs a lot of the noise waves that are coming through. And to get a home airtight or any structure airtight is the number one thing for your sound improvements. But if you are specifically making a decision to go for sound, then open cell foam is the clear champion of these two. And that's why if we have somebody that has got interior walls or floors between units, we'll always use the open cell foam between floors to try and mitigate and deal with sound, because it'll get around the ductwork, it'll adhere to the floor, and we've had the product tested and certified to see just exactly how well it does, and it does exceptionally well. So if people are coming to me and saying, look, we're buying this primarily as a thermal insulation and they need all of the properties, the vapor barrier properties and the air barrier material properties, then they've got no choice. Closed cell foam is the way to go. If they are making a decision to just deal with this acoustically, only acoustics, then open cell foam is the right tool for them. And if they want sort of a hybrid, they really want sound and they're in an area where they don't need the vapor barrier properties of closed cell foam, and they're maybe living near a highway, they're building something that they want a lot of consideration towards sound, then we would look to discuss with them about using open cell foam. You could and can put open cell foam ahead of closed cell foam, but you're really starting to cross diminishing return on your investment. Coming in and putting a layer of closed cell and then putting up open cell foam on top of it. I'm really not a big fan of that for a number of reasons. Because one, people don't understand what's going on behind it. They don't understand that you do have closed cell foam. Visually, you can't see it. It's hard to quality control it. It's hard to be consistent with depths. And then you might as well just pick one product and stick with it, and then take all that product will give you. Either use all the open cell foam and a vapor barrier to go with it if you need to, or use all of your closed cell foam, and not to really mix and match too much. Take a quick look here at the Huntsman Building Solutions open cell foam. This would be, Huntsman now owns Icynene. So this would be the Icynene Classic water-blown foam, weighs 0.5 pound per cubic foot. And on page 2 here, they cover the sound transmission classes and the frequency hertz of their foam. Now, you will not find this with Huntsman or BASF's 2-pound foam. Nobody's going to take a 2-pound or a 3-pound closed cell foam and test it for acoustical properties. They just don't. Again, it's primarily your all-in-one insulation, vapor barrier. That's the reason that we're buying it. Whereas the open cell foam, it was very evident early on that it had very good noise reduction coefficients. Here you see the different frequency hertz, 125, 250, all the way out to the 4,000, and what STC ratings that they give it. 37 is the overall classification here on the product. Now, when I talked to an acoustical engineer out of Texas, they had done some consulting on open cell foam, and I'll actually show you the report on that here. This is the acoustical testing that I was involved with. We actually had a building developer, condominium developer, that wanted to use open cell foam between floor assemblies and wall assemblies to replace cellulose for a unit that he was building. So we needed some extensive testing. And at that time, 2005, Demilec out of the US spearheaded this, because this is where the testing lab, there are only 2 main testing labs for acoustical properties in North America. The first is in Arlington, Texas, and then the second is in Ottawa with the National Research Council of Canada. We had a floor assembly done. Originally there was going to be an open web wood joist construction, and they tested with a TJI system, because that's all that would fit into the booth. But very, very quickly, they show you the frequency hertz and the cycle that the test does. And here are all of your octave bands, your 1/3 octave bands that they test on. And they came up with a final STC rating, sound transmission class, of 50 for the whole entire floor assembly. Now, this is what the Jack Randolph told me with his consulting engineering firm. We were trying to hit a 52, okay? This is what the National Building Code of Canada required on a condominium complex between floors. They wanted a 52 rating. And they show that the cavity the open web floor truss system would be 75% filled with fiberglass. It would have a resilient channel on the bottom, and then it would have 5/8 type X for fire rating, but it would have a single layer of 5/8. We didn't test with the open web. We tested with a 12-inch TJI. Everything else is the same. We scored out at a 52, and I was a little bit deflated because I was expecting to kick the butt really hard of the fibrous industry. And was on the phone with Randolph and Associates, and they said, listen, that National Building Code requirement and that assembly that shows fiberglass, they said, if you were to test that in their laboratory, this laboratory in Arlington, Texas, with the new jet engine wave generator that blows this sound, this piercing sound. I wasn't there for it, but the people that were there at the test and reported back to me told me how it worked, how loud it was. He said, if you were to take that floor assembly with fiberglass and test it today with modern equipment, it'd fail. It'd fail. He said, so this STC 50 is incredibly high. He said, there's no way those assemblies in your building code, the way that they're written and drawn, would match up with modern building techniques and modern stereos. So this is why you go and have a condominium complex or a doctor's office or an apartment complex, whatever, and it's wood frame construction, and they use fiberglass batting or mineral fiber batting, and they build it according to these old grandfathered prescriptive requirements of so much insulation and so on and so forth in the walls and in the floors, and that's why they're loud. That's why you get into a brand new condominium complex and you can hear every noise on the other side of the wall. That's one of the reasons. The main reason for sound transmission is air leakage, and he told me when you get an airtight floor assembly, you're going to be this STC 50, blow the doors off of anything you get in fiberglass for sound transmission. And that has been what we have seen. Here's a piece of anecdotal information. We were in a 3,000 square foot house, main level of a house. They had a multimedia room downstairs, so they wanted the whole entire basement. They wanted the floor assembly done in low density foam for sound for this theater room. Before we started spraying, the plumbers and electricians could be downstairs working in the basement, and if they forgot something, they could just yell upstairs to the apprentice to run back out to the truck and go get them another box of screws or hangers or whatever they needed. After we had done 4 inches of low-density open cell foam in between the floor assembly for sound, when they were in the basement, they could yell all they want. The apprentices upstairs could not make out what they were saying, and they could just hear that they were yelling. They could hear a noise, but they could not distinguish what they were asking anymore. So I think that's pretty good evidence that, all right, something's getting through, but loud speech isn't getting through. Discernible speech, instantly recognizable as to what's going on. You can hear something, but you don't know what's going on. So we could go into a whole nother video just talking about this report and the wall assemblies that were tested and the floor assemblies that were tested, and get into some real technical nitty-gritty stuff here of all these different octave bands, what they all mean, what these sound transmission and decibel losses are, what it means. It's a whole nother engineering and building envelope entity in and of itself. Some of which I understand, most of it I don't. So I won't go into greater details, but I have been able to give people very satisfied results using open cell foam primarily between floors and between suites for sound. And then everything else on the outside of a house or a commercial building, closed cell foam is what we use. And here's your last bit of information. We had some people building a house near an Air Force base where they did jet fighter training. And the Air Force Base had put a requirement on the homes that were built in this subdivision that they all had to take extra measures, extra steps to mitigate and stop the sound. They just did not want complaints coming back to them, which they weren't going to do anything about. So the house that we were involved in, they opted to go closed cell, 2-pound spray foam, walls and roof and everything. The whole entire envelope was done. And they were right in the direct flight path of the runway of where the fighter jets were coming in. And so I asked them, what do you think? Are you happy with your purchase? And they said, oh yeah, absolutely. Like, The home is quiet. We've got no problems, no complaints, and everything has just been incredible. So that's 2-pound closed cell foam with fighter jets going over top of your house. So I think it will work. I've also had a couple of the proverbial Karens out there that we've sprayed foam into them, and they've complained and complained and complained, and the one person came to me and they just didn't want to pay their bill, not to me, to the builder. And the complaint that they made to the builder was, you're going to like this. They said, oh, the house is too loud. And they got 9 and 10-foot ceilings. They got hardwood floors, tile, not a stitch of carpet anywhere in the house, vaulted ceilings, great big huge picture windows, and spray foam insulation in the walls and in the roof. And the house is the loudest house they've ever been in. Yeah, well, no guff. Like, you left a house that had 8-foot ceilings and carpet and batted insulation, and now you're in this. So they sat there and said, well, the house is the loudest house we've ever been in. We're not happy with this. And I said, well, thank you very much, but you didn't choose this for the acoustical properties. You chose it for the thermals. But to prove my point, I said, I've got my spray rig 2 doors down, 3 doors down, wherever it was, working on the next house for that builder, right? And I said to the lady, can you tell me whether or not our generator is running on our spray rig? And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, we're just down at the next lot, a couple of lots down. We're working on the next house. Can you tell whether or not this generator is running? The generator is going to be running at about 90 decibels. Can you tell me right here, right now, standing in your house, whether or not it's running? And she said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, you need to know. You need to tell me. Like, you say the house is loud. Surely you must be able to hear a generator that's running at 90 decibels. So she's like, well, I don't know. I said, okay, well, let's go find out. So I walked to the front door of the house. I think we had been in the kitchen foyer area. So it was just a few steps towards the front door. Opened up the front door. There's the generator. We could hear the generator. I closed the door and I said, your house isn't loud. Pay your bill. And the builder got a big smirk on his face. And we knew we had our mic drop moment. So I want to cut the video off here. I hope I've given you enough information and not bored you to death. Again, if you want to know more, leave me a comment saying you want to know more. And if there's overwhelming comments in favor of doing another video on more sound and more techie info, maybe, just maybe, I'll accommodate everybody and we'll see what we can come up with on Nerdville, okay? So thank you, everybody. Thanks for subscribing. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for viewing this long. If you have, you're a diehard fan, and we will catch you on a new and interesting video soon. Bye.